So Dan, I thought you were going to be sick this week and couldn't make it to Intentionally Blake.
And yet I'm here.
Something's different about you.
Yeah, well, I'm much better looking now.
Yes, the plastic surgery has been a success.
Maybe it's an MI5 face mask or something. No.
Do you have a food heist?
Food
for us?
heist.
Food heist. Did you bring a food heist?
This is all I could. These are the snacks from upstairs. So, food heist.
I don't think it counts. Because being Dan, who you are, you work for Dragonsteel, and the snacks are provided for Dragonsteel employees. Oh, if you weren't Dan, this would be a heist.
That would be a heist. It'd be really improv, poorly planned heist.
As you always tell me, Dan, it doesn't count as a heist if you just also it's just a bash and grab. It's got to be I guess, did you premeditate that?
For a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
A couple minutes preparation right there. It's showing through.
So, I thought today we might talk about things you've heard from your former roommating dear friend Ben about what it's like to hang out with artists and writers all the time when you in fact are a computer engineer.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what
developer.
Ben is. Yes, Ben is Ben. What was Ben's major?
Computer engineering. That's right.
Engineering. Yeah.
Now developer for a long time. What's it like?
Yeah.
That's a very open-ended question. Even more specific.
Well, I mean, you have been pretending you're Ben, right? Of our writing group.
I'm really going to
from
milk this.
Day one, right?
Yeah. In fact, I know you've told the story before, but it was I had a job on campus and it was in my office.
You had a real job.
Yeah.
You're the only person we knew who had a real job that had an office.
Oh, I mean, Ben's office.
But you're pretending to be Ben. You're pretending to be Ben.
Yeah. Yep.
And so you have, how did you get sucked into having to deal with us? Right?
Well, now this is, I don't know if Dan's ever told the story of how we even met, which has probably not come up before.
I don't know that
why
it
would.
I know it, but
we were thrown together randomly by a computer for the BYU programming camp, summer programming camp, because Dan took a programming camp.
Yeah. For whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, back in the day, you're a nerd. You do all the nerd
kinds of stuff. Yeah. And that's the thing. I read lots of fantasy. I read lots of sci-fi, all those kind of things. But so we were thrown together randomly. I brought this big, 90s boombox. Yeah. And had that sitting on the desk. And I got there first and he came in and I was off getting dinner or lunch or something. And I remember he told me this later. He saw it and said, "Oh no, I got stuck with some tech bro." Tech bro wasn't a thing back then, but that was the some guy's gonna be
because you had a boombox.
I brought a boombox. He's like, "Oh no,
that was a tech bro
pop
thing?
Music." No, some pop music layman who didn't. But I had brought in for my boombox Les Mis and Phantom and Cats and
you really are
etc.
Yeah.
So it was. It kind of saved us.
Did you listen? I'm bemused by my wife because I listened to the music of my generation, right? I grew up in the hair metal era, moving into the grunge era, right?
Right, and we're the same age.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So my bands when I was in older middle school, younger high school were Van Halen and Bon Jovi. And moving into, I resisted the whole Nirvana Pearl Jam thing for a little while, but eventually got into them. My wife, she knows none of the music of our generation.
Well, and Dan was like that too, if I recall.
Yeah. I would have to talk to Dan when you're not pretending to be Ben, Dan, at another point, because I'll talk to her and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, this band." She's like, "Never heard of them." I'm like, Gordon Lightfoot. She's like, "Oh yeah, I can name out each one of his songs." I'm like, "Okay, which generation were you born in again?"
That happens a lot though, because Dan did the same thing. He listened to all his parents' music growing up and loved it. And there's some fantastic music from the 60s.
There's very
50s,
good music, but I mean, I listened to the radio.
Yeah.
I listened to, the first album I ever bought was the Young Guns 2 soundtrack because it had Blaze of Glory by Bon Jovi on it. And the rest of the soundtrack, not the symphonic soundtrack by Alan Silvestri or whoever did it, the songs inspired by sort of thing. The rest of the album did not hold up to Blaze of Glory, but Blaze of Glory is a very good song.
It's a very good song. No, I'm neither of those things though, because my parents didn't listen to music.
Okay.
Like we didn't have the radio on at home ever. So I listened to the radio when I eventually got a car, which is around the time I got a job, and I had a coworker introduce me to Rush.
Okay, I do remember from being your roommate, you being Dan, who's pretending to be Ben, the whole Rush thing. Like, I got back into Rush because of you, because you played Rush a lot, so I went and bought the greatest hits albums for Rush and had them in my car forever, because I'm like, oh yeah, Rush is really good.
Yeah. But I missed all that, most of, and I grew up in Idaho Falls,
right.
And you're from Nebraska, so you kind of can relate a little bit. Yeah. The radio wasn't quite cutting edge, so to speak, especially on pop rock and grunge and
right.
Like we had
but Rush is alternative before there was alternative. Like,
yeah.
Rush was
so and they were probably on like whatever the classic rock was in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
But I had to go catch up on, like in college, I went back to catch up on like Pearl Jam and Nirvana, and I didn't ever listen to those until later.
I always preferred the Chili Peppers a little bit more. I don't know. They don't really count as grunge. I'm trying to remember what the Chili Peppers are, but that's that same era.
I think they were one of the very first pop punk.
Yeah, maybe pop punk. I mean, I consider Green Day kind of the pop punk people, but maybe. I don't know. The music people will tell us in the comments which subgenres these all are. But yeah. So we're actually talking about dealing with authors. Dealing with authors.
Authors and other artists.
Yes.
Don't leave out all the other crazy people who do bizarre things.
Like, you spend a non-insignificant amount of your time in this group where the rest of us are authors and editors. And you're like the odd man out.
And maybe Alan, right?
I mean, Alan writes.
Alan does write.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean, Alan has finished like 6 novels.
Yeah.
And
like,
I mean,
good length ones too.
Yeah, and his professional career. This is Alan Layton, who's Layton from Bridge 4. He shows up in my books all the time. He's in the writing group. He's a public school teacher is his job.
Yeah.
But he's written 6 books.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
The only stories I know of that you wrote were ones you wrote when you took a class to try to explore,
Yeah.
You like, and so you end up like, you went on the trips that Dan and Peter and I took to try to get published.
Yeah.
Where we would go to conventions, trying to meet editors and things, and it would be Dan and me, who are both, aspiring writers, very hardcore at it. Peter, who wanted very badly to be an editor, and then you, who had a real job already, and were just humoring us.
Yeah.
And that's just like, why did you put up with us?
Well, put up with you. Come on. It was fun. We were in college.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, let's go on a trip and go to like the place where all these amazing authors are going to be. Like, I got to meet some of my favorite authors, and they weren't in a typical con setting, right?
Right. World Fantasy is more a business con.
Yeah.
See, I suppose, like, I remember, it was Stevenson? Who was it?
The one I met, I was so excited. Was Donald Stevenson. That's right.
Stephen
Donaldson. Oh my
Stephen
gosh.
Donaldson. It was Stephen Donaldson. You're right. I remember because we walked in to the convention and he was standing outside talking, and you recognized him, and the rest of us did not. I'd read Stephen Donaldson, but I didn't recognize him. Yeah.
Yeah. So that one, and like Dan got to meet Fred Saberhagen.
Yeah.
It was, and it, again, it wasn't like handshake, sign book. Leave. It was like they were there to talk shop, and they were just hanging out, and it was kind of amazing. So
okay, well, I'd never actually kind of heard that from you before. This whole idea of it's actually amazing. Like, in my head, you're just because you always seem to be kind of shaking your head at your weird artist
well,
friends.
I mean, you weren't amazing at the time.
No.
But they were amazing.
Not us as writers, but I thought about you putting up with the whole experience of, we're going to go to this. Oh, are you going to go? You were going to take a trip? Are we going to go to the beach in California? No, we're going to go to Corpus Christi in the summer where it's 110 degrees with 95% humidity.
It was 85, like 24 hours. You remember? That's one thing I remember about Corpus Christi. Like it was 84 degrees.
All I know is miserable. You walked outside and it was like humid and hot.
Oh, it was nice.
Okay.
It was really humid, but the temperature was fantastic.
Okay. I'll agree to disagree with you on that. My memory of that is you do not want to walk outside if you can avoid it.
It was very humid. No, there was fun trips though. Like, and I didn't actually have any friends who weren't like English majors at the time, and that's kind of the weird thing, right? Like, I got made roommates with Dan, and we chose to be roommates freshman year, and then Dan is his personality. Yeah, Dan is Dan. He has this gravitation effect that everything kind of bends around him a little bit. So I did, and Leading Edge and writing group and.
Yeah, you were the poetry editor at Leading Edge. This is the school magazine.
Me. Oh my gosh.
Sci-fi fantasy magazine we were on. You were the poetry editor.
Poetry.
Yeah. We put none of us knew what to do with the poetry, so we give that to the engineer.
Yeah.
That's a great choice on our part.
Sounds like a school publication.
I think you did a good job, but it was a slot that needed to be filled. And
fortunately didn't have a lot of poetry submissions.
Yes.
We were not it had to be sci-fi fantasy themed poetry, which exists.
Yep.
It's definitely not.
And we paid like $5 a poem or something. It was not very good.
No idea.
Money, but that might be really good money in the poetry world. Who knows?
Not me, because I'm not in that world.
Yes. Though one of the funny things is, we've pointed this out before. I always thought that my job would be the unstable one, right?
I mean, I did too.
Yeah. And yet, you've changed jobs way more times than I have. You haven't changed careers. And I guess me writing new book series is a little bit like changing jobs.
Because I've made this comparison before. I used to, the writing group still laughs. I'll come up after a year and a half or something like, hey, I got a new job.
Yeah.
But it's the same career. It's like you can publish with Tor and you can publish with Penguin, you can publish with
I suppose
they're all paying you money to do stuff.
Yeah,
you get to keep more of it than I do, but
Yeah.
But that's actually something that. So speaking of living with artists,
yes,
one thing that kills me, and this kills a lot of the software industry, is the idea of royalties, right?
Right.
Because there are a lot of people in corporate America who contribute a ton to kind of the bottom line and stuff coming in, and we don't get royalties. Like
you should.
It's weird to think of this idea of creation.
Yeah.
Where like when you create something, it scales. Like you see the scaling return from it, and a lot of people don't.
No, that is the thing. I mean, I see a different perspective on this because I've been very successful with it. There is high risk. You do all this work, and then I don't know if you ever had this perspective, but I know Tom, who was a chemical engineer, who was my freshman year roommate and still a good friend. When I talked to him about this, he's like, no, you get through the chemical engineering program and you will have a job. As long as you do a decent job at getting through the program. BYU at the time had like a 90-something% placement rate for chemical engineers. People needed them a lot. If you're willing to move and work at one of the big microchip manufacturers, then you will have a job. And that's why he picked that field. I picked a field where no one's calling me on the phone. Like he got called on the phone after he graduated and said, "Do you want to come interview?" Right?
Yeah.
No one calls the English majors with the creative writing emphasis on the phone after they graduate and say, "Oh, I hear that you graduated with a creative writing emphasis. Would you like to submit your book to us?" Doesn't happen.
Right.
But I do think I don't know if it would even be viable in the real world, but I think that that engineers should have a royalty. I think there should be a stake.
Something.
In what
I guess
you write.
if they're in the corporate world, you can call shares and stuff.
Yeah.
Like
you get the stock.
When you join a startup, you get here's a significant portion of the company.
Yeah.
And
there's
the risk, right? Too.
Yeah, and it is much more difficult to differentiate how much of what you did. It's so collaborative. There's so many people involved.
Yeah.
But I mean, Hollywood's been able to work it out. Like on movies, every person has their guild decided what cut of the final profit they should get.
Yeah, and that's like Hollywood's or movies in general are the weird thing to me because they are, I mean, they dwarf some corporations. Even a single movie in the credits these days will dwarf most companies I've worked at.
And I'm a little shocked that that programmers. I'm a little shocked that programmers haven't unionized to the point, particularly like in the video game industry where they're treated so poorly. You did that for a while.
Just 1 year with Isaac Stewart.
Oh yeah, with Isaac Stewart, who's VP of Creative Development at my company, who did all the maps for Mistborn and he's very good at cartography and all sorts of cool art things. So you went to work at that same company and you did not like it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, games is a rough industry, man. And not even just because of the stories you hear in the news of like, oh, they make you work, 20-hour days and da-da-da.
And they do that.
And some do. I know not all of them do, but I've heard that some do. But just like the industry as a whole, you can put, and you've mentioned this because you helped with Moonbreaker a little bit.
Yeah.
Where, how does this monetize is a question that is a lot more complicated than it was 10, 15 years ago, like way more complicated.
These people are passionate and love their game and put all this time into it and then had to try to figure out, like, how do you take this fun game that has this really cool painting mechanic and pitch it to people and get them to actually pay for it? How do you do that? What's the right way? Yeah,
because my brief tenure in video games was I worked on something for a year. It was really fun. It was really interesting, and it got canned. Like the publisher just said, "You know what? We don't think it's going anywhere. We're cutting off funding." And that was it.
That's all your work.
That was the whole thing.
Gone.
Yeah. And that's a very common story in that industry.
I might be putting words in your mouth. Tell me if I am. But I remember you when you quit. You were like, it started to make games less fun doing it.
Well.
Because you are a gamer. You really enjoy games.
Yeah. And a lot of people who get in programming are like, I want to make games. That's my passion. And I always tell people, like, that's great. Learn programming to do that and then see where it takes you. That's fine. But what I said was it is definitely like a labor of love.
Yeah.
And I didn't love it that much.
You take a pay cut.
I took a half my pay cut, and I wasn't even a senior developer back then. That was kind of normal developer.
Huge pay cut.
Yeah, huge
to
pay
go
cut.
work worse hours on something that never got released.
Yeah,
in an environment that was much higher stress, and
it was higher stress for some. Again, this comes back to the risk thing. Like being just a developer without any stake in the company itself, I admit was less stressful. There were people who were very stressed, though.
By the way, I don't think it counts as a food heist if you're not eating any of it. I'm going to point that. You can steal food and not eat it.
I know, but I also...
You're just going to go put it back up there.
Well, that's what you think. What kind of heist would it be if I put it back? This is a really destroyed Snickers bar. I didn't get dinner because I had to leave early.
Yeah, somebody called you, Dan, last minute and said that Dan was sick and that
Dan had to fill in for Dan.
Dan had to fill in for Dan.
Listen, your snack drawer is...
Wow, that is quite the... Well, we just...
Look at this. Come on. I'm not eating that. All right.
So you've been going to writing group for... 20
off and on for 20-something years.
4 years, right?
And I took some breaks. I know. Part of it, I did take a break.
Very long breaks.
Not very long, maybe, but it was. This is a funny story. You and Dan got married before I did.
Not Dan and I marrying each other, but
no. to your respective wives.
Yes.
But I was single for longer.
Yes.
And you moved writing group to Friday nights.
That's right.
Which for a single person
is a big deal.
Not as great. So I did take a break, I think, once or twice.
Yeah.
Like a year or something. But.
Yeah, that's the thing. Our Friday nights for quite a long while now, because I think they moved to Fridays maybe 15 years ago or something like that.
That was a long time ago.
Maybe, but was just like, I guess I probably moved it to Friday night once I got married. And I got married 14-ish years ago.
Sounds about right. And Dan had kids already, so he was...
16 years ago for me. So
okay.
So we did that because people might be like, you give your Friday night up. We needed a night where people didn't feel bad staying
up late.
Because people needed to like put kids to bed before they came and stuff like that. So we needed a night that if you were getting home at midnight, it wasn't as big a deal. And when you've got little kids, your kids you're sending to school, like you just can't do that on a weeknight very easily.
No, and it's so funny too because I have this distinct memory of I think it was Peter saying, I say distinct and I say think, saying, writing group, like this is our social time, like this is when we actually get to sit down with friends, and and it's just like that's so weird, you weird married people with kids, and then 10 years later I'm so there. So it's all I've got. Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah.
So what is like your perspective on like Dan and me and Peter, like being your buddies who had this weird, wacky dream in college, and now the three of us are all working in a company together?
Pretty successful company too.
Yes.
It's been great because I got this a little bit when I was growing up. My dad's very practical. I think you know from your mother.
That Idaho practicality is because if you don't know, my parents are from Idaho Falls, and my grandma. It's like
I was 2 doors down from her. Yeah, I lived next to her, and your cousins were my next door neighbors.
Were in between.
Yeah. And my mother also very practical. But my wife's family, I told her growing up, like, no, you have to learn like an office work job or be a teacher, or like you can't do anything creative. No one does that. It doesn't work. Like told to her face, right? So it's been awesome in that respect where we don't say anything like that to our kids. We're like, you can do kind of anything if you can find a way to make it profitable.
Yeah.
Like, and you can do, like, my favorite story is still our friend Drew Olds, who is so interesting.
This is Jancy Patterson's husband.
Yep.
Jancy, who writes the Skyward stories with me. If you've read Jancy's work, if you haven't, you should.
And as far as I have heard, paints minis and crafts his own minis, custom minis for wedding toppers or events or whatever.
Or People's Just Armies for Warhammer.
Yep. And is able to make a living off that. Yep. And if that isn't like do what you love if you can make it work. Like
professional mini painter is his job. And
he's my go-to for like, you have to get a practical job. Oh, I know this guy. Like, it's not even you. It's Drew.
No, Drew's is. Were you at that party though? It was Gunda, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You knew Gunda. Yeah. You introduced. Yeah. Anyway,
it was when we were roommates in the house with Earl. Yeah. It was in that.
So there was a party at Gunda's house, and I went to it, and this is one of the few times I can remember the exact words that someone said. There was someone at this party that I and said hi to, and she said, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "I'm a writer. I'm a novelist." And she said, "Oh, so you're unemployed." Right?
That is the exact kind of dig.
Kind of dig. And by then I was published. And I'm like, actually, that's why I remember that one more than the others. Because all the others, I was like, you have to be like, I'm working on it. I'm aspiring. That one time I was able to say, well, guess what?
Someone paid me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been inspiring in that respect, right? Like that's good. I hesitate occasionally talking to people like, it doesn't always work out.
It doesn't work out more often than it does work out.
And that's and like you had a fallback plan. Dan,
I didn't have a good one.
Well, it was there, right?
It was there.
Dan
teach community college, creative writing.
It's a job.
Yeah, it's a job. Probably not even creative writing. Teach freshman composition at a community college.
Yeah.
Dan had a real job.
He was at his fallback for quite a while.
Yep.
So that's the reality of, I guess, you're doing any kind of creative work is like you may end up on your fallback temporarily, long term. Who knows? Like,
I mean, I've said before that I consider programming to be a really interesting intersection with creative writing.
Yeah.
Because I told you this before, right? I took a programming class in college, and it was the worst class I ever took because it's the only one that severely impacted my writing.
Oh, yeah. You were burned out.
Because doing the programming felt like doing my writing, where even writing essays didn't feel as much like writing fiction as programming did. I've never found a single thing as close to writing a novel as programming. Because for me, writing a novel is all about problem solving. How do I get this to happen with these characters? How do I get this character attribute across? How do I solve the problem that my character isn't likable enough, or is the motivations aren't clear? It's all about trying to get these things across. And it was the same way with the programming.
Yeah, make this thing happen. You and Dan have talked about that on this podcast before, and I totally agree. As I get older, even here's a funny story. Speaking of like living with all these weird artists, and Dan just having this gravitation field around him, he got me to take an honors arts class at BYU with him. It was on just Sondheim, and a whole semester on just Sondheim. And I didn't know anything about Sondheim at the time.
Okay.
I wasn't a fan then.
Oh, because I kind of associate you with like the Sondheim fan that I know. My friend, the Sondheim fan.
I am now.
Yeah.
Mostly because of that class. But where was I going with that story?
Crazy artist you live with, he roped you into it by having the weird distortion field.
Yeah. Our teacher, who was amazing, Matt Bean, if I remember his name correctly, he would talk about how Sondheim isn't for the old tired businessmen in New York.
Right.
And the old tired businessmen who wanted to go see Cats, right? They want to go see Phantom. And the older I get, and the more I get into my career, I'm that guy.
Interesting.
I am too tired for the weird stuff. And it is simultaneously a little disappointing at the same time. I'm like, yeah, man, I don't know.
That's interesting because I was just I like to stay abreast of things that are happening in entertainment, right?
Yeah.
Just whatever movements are happening. If I run across something and I know it's popular with a segment of the population, I will do my best to read it or watch it or experience it so I just know, right? And one of those things is a subgenre of manga, where I'm not a huge manga reader, but a lot of people are, and there's some very good stuff out there called Isekai. Peter likes to talk about this. Yep.
I know about this because of a game.
Okay.
It's the one where you kind of level up. It's a manga
I think
or anime where they...
progression fantasy is very attached to Isekai. So Isekai is just, I don't know what it means. Peter knows. He's told me before and I've forgotten it, but it's portal fantasy.
Oh, it's a portal. Okay.
Right.
Is it always a portal?
I think Isekai is portal fantasy.
If we're getting this wrong.
A lot of them are lit RPG, which is what you're thinking of, or progression fantasy. So Isekai, the kind of classic Isekai, I went and read the first chapters of a bunch of them. I didn't finish many of them because mangas go very long. But I read a decent chunk of a number of them. And a lot of them, and I'm sure there's Isekai that I'm not covering that are outside this format, but the popular ones, I just kind of went down the list, are person from our world gets hit by a bus or is doing something heroic. Generally, not always, but a lot of times, they are an old, tired businessman.
Oh, really?
Right, yeah.
Interesting.
In Japan, where they've been worn down and just ground down.
Oh.
Some of them are teenagers, but a lot of them are these business people or young salarymen, but who've also been ground down. It's basically the same idea as Stardew Valley. If you started that, where it's like person in cubicle is just having a miserable life, goes out, saves a kid who's about to get hit by a truck, gets hit by the truck. Some, deific personality comes to them and says, you get to be reborn. You were so heroic. I'm gonna make you reborn into the kind of world of your choice, and you get to have one boon. What will you pick? And they will pick things like, I want to be just amazing at farming, or something like that, or I want to be this. And a lot of them are just they're reborn into this world, and there are these level up mechanics a lot of times and things like that.
I thought some kind of growth mechanic was important to it, but I don't remember.
All the ones I read had it.
Okay.
So it might be. But I seem to recall Peter telling me it just means Portal Fantasy. So, but anyway, like I read this one where it's just like, I'm a farmer and I have a magical tool that just helps me farm. And it was interesting. But I was not engaged, no offense, but I was not engaged by any of these. Mm-hmm. For the opposite or the same reason that you don't like I love my job. I have a really creative, interesting job. It's really fun. I am not tired of the day in doldrum. I do not want to escape and become a farmer. Yeah. And I feel like some of these that I read were written specifically for someone who just wants to get to a place where they can be successful, where their effort in this life translates to an easy next life, because there's almost no stakes. The characters for the ones I read are so powerful. If they try something, they're successful at it. And there's an engagement to that sort of competence sort of thing, but there's no working for it. It's just like, you know what? I'm just going to do this thing and make life better for everyone.
Interesting. So yeah, it's like, where does your escapism want to go?
Yeah, right? Where does your escapism want to go? You say that, for the old tired businessman, for a lot of people reading these, it feels like I want to escape from a life where I am not meaningful and where all of my work just leads to me getting exhausted, and go to one where I am meaningful, doing something peaceful and serene that connects me to nature and things like that.
That's a really sad commentary on maybe the salaryman Japanese tradition.
And maybe I'm reading too much into this. And I also know that I never read Konosuba. I never read, which is the most popular anime one. And I know that's the most popular of the Isekai anime, I believe. So the anime people are now going to be even more angry than the music people were that we got the genres wrong, that we're getting the genres.
The only one I've heard of is it's a great one of those long titles. That time I got reincarnated as a slime.
I read that one.
Okay, I've heard of that one.
Again, it was kind of fun, but I wasn't gripped by it.
That one I think is supposed to be more traditional fantasy level up adventure.
It was,
right?
But he came from our world, gets reborn as a slime, and then the slime gains the powers of anything that it ingests or sees, use powers or things. So by the end of the first couple of issues, just has all these amazing abilities to do anything that it wants to.
That is very interesting of a escapism, right?
Yeah.
Because traditionally, and I learned this, from you mostly, you want to have Wolverton trifail cycles. You want to have conflict, things going
wrong, struggles.
Yeah, you need to feel like a mountain was overcome for character or plot or whatever. And then, but this idea of I'm so tired. I just want to everything's awesome and it's amazing.
And this slime goes about making everyone's life better, right? In this book, the slime meets some goblins, and they're gonna slay him, and I'm gonna get it wrong because it's been a number of months since I read it. But then the slime defeats them, and they're all scared, and then he gives them names, and by giving them names, they level up and become cooler because wow, someone cares about us. We have names, and then they form a village full of goblins that are now we're gonna actually have society and build a city and things, and everyone's the goblins are doing this just because this little slime person goes around and is was, and this just keeps happening. Like the wargs that attack them get recruited and become like better and nicer, and then they're like building this great city. So it's all about the kind of building something in this specific one, but it's never hard. Like the slime show up, or the wolves show up, and the slime's like, "Hey, I bet I could use that power. I'm going to use that." And then they're all like, "Wow, that's a great power. We should join you." And so, and it's a very different type of story, and it kind of proves that even like when I teach my class, the first thing I say is, understand that I'm going to be like wrong a lot. Because I'm going to talk about my lived experience, and there's no one right way to write a story. And this is a very successful story that ignores what I would consider a foundational principle to storytelling, which is that conflict and struggle makes for successful fiction. And this is like, nope. Yeah. And it's still very successful. And I'll say I enjoyed reading it. I wasn't gripped by it, right? But I enjoyed, like, for what it was. It was an enjoyable experience.
That's if anything, the internet has given us kind of this thing where we all get exposed to like just way different ideas of what's fulfilling than, because again, like we grew up with, you know, physical encyclopedias and you know, no real internet. And what we knew was, I mean, quote unquote, Western culture, but like, that's all we had to reference from. Like there wasn't a lot to. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Tolkien, Donaldson, Shannara.
Yep.
Brain.
Brooks.
But yeah, I mean, you know, that was fantasy, and they kind of defined those things. And I don't know, that is very interesting to.
Yeah. To just like, be exposed to that. I would recommend that people read them just to see like, hey, what is this thing doing that's so different from what our kind of traditions are? Yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of these fantasy worlds are also, they grew out of Tolkien also. Because they are the sort of gaming inspired, and the whole kind of gaming, though Tolkien didn't have slimes, that's more of a, you know, a not Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior type thing. But those are very Tolkien inspired kind of classic fantasy worlds. And so these are all go back to Tolkien too, but are very different.
Different direction. So if you are a tired corporate worker, check these out.
Check these out. Then they might really work for you. I mean, right now, lit RPG, which is book forms of similar sorts of things. I think lit RPG, the distinction is Isekai has to be someone coming from our world. Lit RPG, you can be born in that world and still have the progression fantasy.
So things. I just had this explained to me like a week or two ago. I didn't know what this I've heard lit RPG, but someone just told me what it was.
Lit RPG.
Very recently.
Yeah.
Where it's like, because we grew up on like Dragonlance, which I thought was pretty cut and dry, like people around a table playing D&D, and then you write it out and it's a book. I guess it can get more cut and dry.
But in Dragonlance, the characters don't know that they have a character sheet.
Right.
And in Lit RPG, the characters do know and are striving to level up and spend their skill points and things as they are living their life. That's just how life is in these alternate dimensions. And it is the most successful indie published fantasy genre right now. If I look at the top of the list of what's selling in fantasy, it's almost always a lit RPG. If you find the indie fantasy book that's top of the list.
Yeah, and this is how I know that I'm getting old. I'm because I heard about that. Someone explained it to me, and I thought, the hell, like, are you really? That's my old man response, right? Like
how can you be more of an old man than us? Where you're a year younger than me.
I know. But I don't know. I had a point where, and again, maybe it comes back to like, I am getting to be tired old businessman. Like it's a thing, but I'm just like, and I don't want to hate on anybody who loves it, but I just have no time or interest for that. Whatever you want to do, man. Okay. That's I'm getting there. I was going to bring it back on topic a little bit just to say, I had decided a long time ago, like Well, someone needs to be just a consumer.
Right.
You can't all be producing things all the time. And even at that, I can tell I'm getting outpaced by the stuff that's coming out. Like I just can't keep up. Don't have the energy. Don't have the interest. I don't know.
I am glad that there are a lot of people out there who are willing to read. Like if we were all writing books and no one were reading anyone's books, well, maybe that would be fine, but it would be a world where I would not be able to be professional at this and would not have a job and would not be sitting here signing. By the way, last time I was signing pages that you aren't used to.
The silver ones. People asked about those.
People asked about those. Those who are listening, not looking. 2 weeks ago or last week, it was 2 weeks ago, I think. I was signing these silver pages instead of what I normally sign, which are large pages to go in the leather bounds. And those were for Taiwan. Taiwan, my publisher in Taiwan is a really great publisher, and they are doing a new edition of one of the books, and they sent us some of those to sign. These instead are for the UK. These are for Defiance.
I like that art on the.
Yeah, this is their cover art for. So the Skyward books in the UK are published by my publisher, who publishes my Cosmere books.
Okay, so same.
It's Gallant's.
Gallant's, yeah.
And Gallant's publishes those, and they publish them as adult because Skyward is right on that line, right? Both of my YA series, my Reckoners, and this basically are starring people between 17 and 19. And so it's
pretty
like,
close.
Are they adult or YA? In the US, they get published as YA, so we have a YA publisher, Delacorte. In the UK, published by my adult publisher, and they get the same illustrator who does all of my books to do it. So,
interesting. I haven't seen those.
Yep. So that's what I'm signing is it's hard to get to Taiwan and the UK, particularly in the days where I've decided to travel a little bit less, and so just signing some pages for them that will be bound into books and then will be sold for no extra cost.
Well, the ones for Taiwan, they look pretty fancy.
Yeah,
whatever they were. So if the whole book is that fancy,
stuff.
That's pretty cool.
Taiwan is. It was really interesting to visit Taiwan the first time. I've been twice to tour Taiwan, and I won't go into depth because you guys have heard this story before, but Mistborn came out right in that era when Hunger Games came out and dystopian YA became big. And Mistborn is the book that took off in Taiwan of that movement. So it outsold Hunger Games and things like that. Everyone was wanting YA dystopian, and Vin is a 16-year-old girl in a dystopian world where the Dark Lord has won, and it just became the book that became the Hunger Games for Taiwan.
I never heard that.
You haven't heard that one?
No.
And so it was huge. Mistborn is sold very well everywhere, but in Taiwan was disproportionately large. It was the highest per capita sales for Mistborn.
Oh, wow.
And so I went there on tour, and it was a really interesting experience. It was the first time that I filled like an auditorium, right? And now I do that very consistently wherever I go, but back then I had never done that before.
It was just Elantris and Mistborn, right?
So they published it like, it was just a little bit of a lag. I think Hunger Games was like 2000, no, it was like 2005, 2006. Anyway, it was a little lag. So Way of Kings hadn't come out yet, but it was getting ready to be published in the US. So this was like 2009 or something like that. And not filling auditoriums, but it's just like hundreds of people.
Oh, that's cool.
And they had me knight people in the Order of Sanderson.
With a sword?
With a sword on a stage. The people who'd won like essay contests about how much they loved my books. I still have a few people that I met back then that still write me. Fiki, if you're watching, hello. And it's really cool. So Taiwan. But that's not these. These are UK. I love you guys in the UK. Have a very good relationship with my publisher in the UK. And they do a very good job with the books. And Jillian is my editor, and Jillian is great. So she actually does a lot of work for us. Normally with these books in the UK, you just send them the book and they they package it, but they don't do anything with the text because it's already been edited over here.
Yeah.
But since Moshe has moved more toward retirement, I don't have a line editor in the U.S.
Well, don't they at least like change to British spellings and stuff?
They don't change American books to British spellings. Nope, they don't. We do that when we bring them over here. I wish we didn't. But over there, people are just used to reading if it's an American book, it has American spelling. They don't even add the extraneous use to anything or stuff like that, which made me sad the first time. But anyway, but Jillian line edits for us and does straight up editorial work, which she doesn't have to do because she doesn't get paid more to do that.
Right.
So thanks, Jillian. Very good editor and takes good care of us. So
well, hooray. And there we are. I have to say, after last time, I was a little nervous. There's going to be another kind of.
Well, we would only do that to Ben.
Oh yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we'll have to conspire on something to do to Ben next time he comes on.
Some other time.
Some other time.
That's right. Well, how's that, Dan?